Okay, people. So it has been a minute, but Echoes from the Void is back. And today we're looking at a really interesting TV series, right? And we have got the co-directors of that show here. We have Lucy Tulugarjuk,
Mhm.
Mia Lotsova, and Milia Buscemi. Did I get any of those right?
No. A for effort.
Oh man, I'm so bad with pronunciations. I apologize, ladies.
I just realized we all have challenging names to pronounce.
That's true.
And it didn't occur to me until right now.
Took me a while to pronounce Maya's last name. It's okay.
All
Should
right,
we all
maybe.
pronounce our names just for
Yeah,
the
I'll
audience?
let you
Yeah.
introduce yourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead, Lucy or Bialy.
Mm. Lucy Tulugarjuk. Miali.
And me, uvanga, Miali Buscemi, Miali Buscemi.
And I'm Maia Iotzova.
Yeah, I was not even close. God damn it. Oh boy. Well, I really appreciate you joining me today. Um, because you've got this, you know, your new series, uh, Arnaapik.
Arnaapik.
Arnaapik, cool. Which is, yeah, that started on the 12th, right? That's been airing for the last couple of weeks. And how's that reception been? Right now, a few episodes are out. Like, have you had much feedback on that?
Mm. A few for me through Messenger or not directly to me, but reading it on social media is what I'm receiving. Direct texting also took place, saying how important it was to have a voice that can be related by other women. Thank you.
Mm. And it's a challenging subject, right? Because we're looking at violence against women in its different forms, like with a kind of a focus on domestic violence. What were the thoughts around putting this together? Because I think it's in the second episode um, that I think, Lucy, you were talking to some of the actors and talking about that at times you had to stop because the subject and what you're dealing with. And so going into this, were there thoughts about, you know, the impact of it, right? Dealing with all of this on your mental health and, you know what I mean? Just getting through the days and the aftermath of it all. Uh, let's start with you, maybe, Maya.
Oh, okay. Um, we knew it was a very, very challenging subject. That's why we also decided to have some fictionalized scenes so we don't
Yeah.
have, and they're not like, you don't see domestic violence head on, like you just there it's talked about.
Mm,
But we thought like that's gonna be a bit more removed, but actually ended up being very, very triggering and close to people that were performing. So yeah, like in terms of, I think we were a bit caught, I would say somewhat unprepared for how heavy it was during the filming. We thought we would prepare, but we weren't,
Yeah.
because when these emotions come and you experience them, it's just like, people were getting caught like in trauma response. So we stopped one day, and during that day, like, some of the actresses got massage, so to help them like move through it. And there was some therapy that's going to be involved with some of them. So it's really challenging. I think nobody can be really prepared for it. Yeah.
So on the set, was there anything in place to help, for like a room put aside where you could go and just kind of, recenter your thoughts kind of thing?
I don't know if there was like a room put aside. I mean, there was some space for the actors sometimes, but like sometimes not, because we were, our budget is not big, and sometimes we were in tiny spaces. And I was during one filming, I was on the balcony, and it was in October, at the end of October in Canada. So, it wasn't warm. It wasn't super cold, but like, it wasn't warm either. So all the equipment was on the balcony, and I was watching from the balcony and talking to Lucy, who was on the phone most of the time because she was in Saskatoon, which is a different province. And Miali was acting, so like she was in the room. But yeah, it was very challenging because we didn't have that kind of like set that would accommodate having a different room. Or sometimes there was a room, but like sometimes not.
I think that's the thing with subjects like this. There's a toll that comes with telling the story, right, with shining the spotlight on it. But it's such an important conversation to have that it has to be done. You know what I mean? So it's kind of, you're caught in that, like, do I want to put myself through this thing? But I also need to shine this light, right? Because who else is doing it, right? The conversation has gone quiet. So we need to restoke that fire. So you're put in that catch-22 situation, but all power to you for doing this, because it is such an important thing to talk about. But there was in episode 2, just where Malia, you were putting the beads into the bowl. Like, just watching that is so impactful, because you're just hearing the names and you know what this is signifying. Right? It's just, yeah. I mean, how did you find like filming segments like that?
Yeah. That too was also very impactful. Within moments of even just dropping the first bead, immediately you just kind of like felt an overwhelming sense of like heavy isn't the right word. It didn't feel, yes, it felt heavy, but it's not the initial sensation. It was like, whoa, okay, it really, like, I just really sunk in, and it was almost, oh, it's not really a sensation that's easy to describe, even just to think about even the first, and then the more like each additional name, like it brought me into so many different parts of my emotions. Like sometimes I felt deep love, and then other times I felt deep sorrow, and other times it was almost even a numbing feeling. So it was yeah, even for me it was deeply impactful. I'm like, I'm still in, I feel like I'm still processing some of those things. And I'm I'm trying to be generous with trying to sit through the process. And it's, I mean, patience is not the right word, but I'm definitely learning to move through the process in a way that's, I'm just trying to be gentle, because it's so delicate, and it just needs a lot of care, even after, like, even with the episodes themselves. Like I'm still finding that um, I'm still sitting with a lot of things. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine it, because I think it's like you found this list of names, but I think that there might be this list of names, but that means there's a whole heap that haven't been registered anywhere,
Yeah.
So it's like that was something I thought of when you were reading those. Like, what about the ones that have no name, that we
Yeah.
don't know about?
Yeah. That too is probably another feeling, because like at some point I'm thinking like, okay, this is a lot of names, and then you start to think, well, this is not it. There's so many more. And also, even saying some of the names out loud and just thinking about my community and the people that I personally know, and even if it's not necessarily a name that I recognize as like there was something in my spirit that completely recognized those women and those individuals. Thinking about it, to some degree, it felt like I knew some of them even without knowing who they were.
Yeah.
So I definitely carried a lot in, like, each of those beats definitely carried a lot with them.
Yeah. And when you kind of thought about making this series, how did you decide on your approach, right? The best way to frame it, the people that you wanted to interview, just doing the the acting segments, like the beats, just all of these different things. How did all of this kind of come to you?
If I may, I can share. When I think it blossomed when people from our audience from Totuk Tavuk were asking if the feature film we created prior to this, if it was true or if it was based on fiction. And so that was a highlight that I wanted to bring out, that yes, these are true. Some of them are acted out, created into a feature film, and it inspired me to create something that is instead a documentary, and also mixed it with fiction, so that based on what we collected, and also included, it was important to include elders' messages and also youth and our medium age group message. So then we put in the young version of Annie and her sister, and the older version when they got older, having that stage and memories and what is real and which is fiction. Again, as a viewer or receiver, someone, male or female, may relate to these stories. And so it was important to protect individual cast and crew, because we were able to relate, whether we were acting or behind the scene, one way or another, in the woman's voice in these stories. So I think it was a lot of woman's voice in one or two, sharing, being the voice of many. Ano kaya? Miali, ito kisinakpa o kakasukta ka? I'm now 50. I was really young when we saw transition from our parents moving from their homeland to a hamlet, and some were sent to south for tuberculosis or medical treatment, and some to residential school. Some did not make it back. And us as young children, we watched our parents, witnessing them not being able to communicate to the authorities, whether it may be the police, the social workers, the teachers. When they're not in front of these people or authority, the decision makers, they were powerful. But when it came to that, it felt maybe a threat, because they were threatened. Their children can be taken if they don't obey, or child tax can be taken if they don't obey. It even led to trading post, where they can limit you to what you can purchase in exchange for fox. It all went back to early 1900s to 50s, when residential school and hamlets were formed, to modern day, where we see after effect of present day. And it's because of mistreatment that was forced upon us. If it was treated differently, I think we would have less crime in our Canadian Arctic, or less suicide maybe, if there was a fair treatment to Indigenous people of Canada. In promise to borrow our land, there were many promises that were made. They promised our parents $2 a month for a wooden house with heat, and then some did not move right away to the settlements, so they killed our hunting dogs to control our parents, so that they don't move and they stay in one settlement. And then that also impacted our parents, but can't fight back. So we saw that. And our older siblings forced to residential school, and us, shh, don't, you might be taken by social services. So always in fear of, if we don't listen, we might be taken. Or look, white people is coming. So it's always like, okay, we better say, okay, it's so that fear of by either Catholics or government, and that was the 80s. Up and sometimes we finally started fighting back after truth and reconciliation happened, and I think that was the big step. And when the little bodies and the little children were found in the church, what Inuit and the First Nations knew about for so many years and tried to share. But no one listened until it was actually proven. So then the world listened. Oh. Then people are like, okay, I think we need to give them space to have a space. And that's not okay to be put in that position. It's a genocide that happened to Indigenous Inuit, First Nations, Métis in Canada that is silenced. And what we see out on the streets is what is stereotyped sometimes by a settler. There are some of us who work really hard too to earn income and living and supporting other families who need extra food because of high cost of living. These are real facts that we wanted to voice out, and injustice and crimes, education system. If you're in the South, it's way more advanced than if you're in the Arctic or in the reserve. But Canada is trying to improve, I hope. We have a Governor General who's Inuk, which is great. Naktan Obed, who's the president who speaks for Inuit nationally, he's been speaking up a whole lot too, and so was Aluki Kutik. Our Inuit leaders are speaking up, and we have Laureate Laudat, Member of Parliament, who are all Inuit great leaders, and actors like myself and Miali, who are the voice of many women in this documentary. And it really impacted us. And sometimes as a director, I would ask myself, do I stop to protect them? But it was also hard to acknowledge, if I stop, we're also silencing our other women. And it hurts to even go there. So I kept going, apologizing to my actors. I'm sorry I'm putting you through this. It was hard emotionally, mentally, spiritually. Even now, as we speak about it, it's a bit. I have a mother who's going to see it. I have siblings who's going to see it. I have children, and now my grandchild who's 4, who will one day understand it. And I don't really talk about these things to my children, so the oldest one may remember, but the youngest don't know who I really am. So part of me comes out through these, whether it may be a dialogue or part of the diary or just crying in the kitchen or loving the moment with the mother-daughter, braiding her hair, telling her she'll be strong. So everything and anything involved was heartfelt and very strong. in many ways, whether it was in front or behind the scene, camera operator, audio recorder, editor. Big bravo to Miali and Angeline, Maya. We have children. And in order to come back to home carrying this we didn't want to do that. So we like, okay, let's cry for now. Let's finish for now. Let's close it for now. Let's go home. And if you want to cry some more, it's okay to cry. Thank you, Kevin.
No, that was important to hear. I think it's like you said, right? This, they were doing this in the 80s. And when you think that's not that long ago, right? That's when you hear about certain things in history, some atrocities, you're like, how did that happen? But that was in 1450 or, what I mean? Like it was a long time ago, but you still scratch your head like, how did we do those things? But then when it's stuff that happened in, like the 80s, the 70s, you're like, by this point, we should know how to treat each other. We should know what's wrong and right. But these things happen and then they're silenced, right? No one talks about them. And it's really weird, the things that seem to be cherry picked to shine lights on. There's, I think it was in episode 2, I'm gonna butcher this, but Nakuset, right? She's she worked for the Native Women's Shelter in Montreal. She's the executive director of that company, but she was talking about the work she was trying to do and point out these deficiencies in care, and she wasn't listened to, but she was just a frontline worker. So she moved up in the organization and now she's the executive director and she can have better conversations. But it's like she pointed out like that in schools you read about Anne Frank's diaries, right? There's things that you read about the First World, Second World War, but there's subjects that we do not cover, we do not touch. I just remember at school we were doing something on the I think the Second World War. In this book, one of the later chapters was about slavery, and they asked this question, and in it I thought that it kind of touched on the repercussions of slavery. So I brought that up and I was like, yeah. And then as in chapter, and it talks about this, which you can, and the teacher pulled me up and was just like, why are you talking about that? We're not talking about that. We're talking about the war. Don't talk about that. And you run up against these barriers all the time. So it's really important to get a voice for these things, because how many other documentaries on this are you seeing? And the governments, they know this has happened, right? They know about these things, but what are they doing? We see little movements, but no big, impactful change. And it's just heartbreaking. you know? Oh, sorry, I just kind of talked at you for a bit. It's like, huh. But yeah, no, I was just watching, and I just thought it was really interesting, you know, because we are looking at these different topics, right? These different aspects, right? Like talking with elders in episode 1. And I thought it's an important thing to kind of look at, because I feel that, and I don't know if you see this, but I think talking to people with knowledge is always important, right? You know, if you learn from your history, you're not going to make the same mistakes, hopefully. But I think sometimes when people have gone through a thing, they're kind of like, well, I got through it, so you'll be fine. You know what I mean? It's like you see it with, I think, parents that were beaten as a kid, right? So they're likely to then do the same sometimes, because they're like, well, it made me stronger, so I'm going to do it to you and make you stronger, right? And so we see these repeating patterns, and people will give the advice of, no, go back to your husband, right? Go back to your boyfriend. It's fine. Like, he's apologized. It will change. It will. But, you know what I mean? It's not the advice that is needed. It's not the encouragement. But where else are you going for that? You know what I mean? It's like, what did you, in doing that episode, in talking to all of those people, like, were there like any elders that were kind of like still in the mindset of, yeah, it's not really that much of a big deal?
I think the simple answer is yes. And it's very complicated in the sense that, like, I mean, the topic in itself is complicated to discuss, and I think, at least from my observation or my perspective, when, I mean, it isn't to say that, I mean, I'm not a person who's going to say who's processed what, or what they've processed or what they haven't processed. But I think sometimes when you don't know how to deal with something, it's easier to just say, let's just not talk about it, you know?
Yeah.
And I think when there's so many complexities, whether there was like violence in a home, or when you look at like Inuit and the things that Lucy also brought up, you know, colonization, all of these things that make it a very complex layer of things to talk about. And I think when it's something that you don't know how to deal, like, where do you even begin? Like, where do you even begin to start taking away those layers that like, because if you take one layer, it's connected to another.
Mm.
And it might, I don't know, I can imagine, I mean, even for me, like, as a human being who tries to overcome things, it is complex, and it can be daunting and overwhelming. But I mean, this is exactly it. This is why it is so important to at least start somewhere, to have a conversation. And we did try to bring in, and you'll see throughout the episodes if you continue to watch them, that we invite people to have conversations with people, like people who inspire us, whether they're artists or I mean, yeah, elders like that too. I mean, even for me, like I grew up in a community where I'm in a culture too, where elders are respected individuals in the community, and they are a huge they're huge to our growth. And it really was important for us to be able to give them the time and the space to, okay, here, like, okay, what do you know, or can you share some of these things with us? So yes, we have the elders, and we have youth, we have, again, like I said, artists, like people who inspire us, who have, or who also have paved the way for other I mean, the focus was Inuit, but yeah, we also had other indigenous groups in mind when talking about people who've helped pave the way for us so that we could keep moving forward. So we did try to bring like a variety of people, whether they were people who work in the system, and people who like, or frontline workers. Yeah, so we tried to be mindful of inviting as many people as we could, just to hear all sides of the story, because it is hard to say, because we knew there were going to be people that didn't want to talk about these things. And yeah, like it started with a simply there were people that didn't want to have a conversation, but we wanted to keep it open. And we wanted to have, we not just wanted to have the conversation, we knew it was important to have the conversation, and that was just to get it going. Yeah.
After kind of, being in this world, in this topic for so long, making this documentary series, I imagine that you've thought about solutions, about kind of things that could be put in place to make positive changes. Like, what do you kind of see could be done, like, going forward?
Co-directors.
Well, episode 6 really looks at community programs. So one of the really important things that we did in that episode is Miali and Angilirq and our crew traveled to Rankin Inlet in the Canadian Arctic, and they met with a men's group. That's a men's healing group. So of course we don't have, you can't tell men going, I mean, you could tell them like you need some healing, but like it has to come from the inside as well. So Noel Kalujak is the one that started that men's group and is doing amazing things about men's mental health. And we hope that people see that as well. And because there's, it's a two-way street, right? We also looked at a program for self-defense. And that program wasn't just like, let's be a karate master and like, it was also talking a lot about like how to handle violence, how to de-escalate, how to find a safe space if you're living in a violent relationship, like knowing the signs and how to like, find that safe escape. And like, so it was important conversation. Not everything is in the series, but just being part of the filming, I found like that was really empowering for Inuit women. They were trained by this couple who are non-Inuit, but the idea was that they train Inuit women to go and train other Inuit women for self-defense and go into the communities. So that was really, I think that's another aspect that's really important. Of course, having like safe spaces, like shelters. I mean, I don't know if you know, but like in the north, housing is a huge issue. So you have overcrowded houses, and people just don't have anywhere to escape to because the next house is just as overcrowded. And so having shelters, I think it's really important. We talked to some of the shelters as well. And for me, like, I mean, I'm not Inuit, but what I see a lot is like the effects of colonization and poverty that results a lot of colonialization, because when you have poverty, you have food insecurity, you have house insecurity, so it's hard to like think of other things, like you're just kind of so that's not, that could be addressed like from the government for sure, like food security, house security. These are very tangible things that could be addressed. Yeah.
Is employment another issue as well?
Yeah, I don't know if Miali and Lucy want to comment on that.
In the communities, it can be, yes. I say that only because I come from a community of like 450 people, give or take.
Right.
And definitely one of the reasons that people decide to move, because employment or lack of employment is definitely an issue. But I also wanted to add, I think something that is often overlooked as a solution, I think, is connection. And that is definitely, and when I talk about connection, I'm talking about, human connection or community, or just being connected to other women, or to your community, or to elders, or whoever you feel comfortable with. But I think forming, or at least, forming connections, but also I think being able to show, okay, I think particularly when you're in a situation where you're not sure where to go, who to talk to be able to see a group of people, say in our series, who are good examples of people that, like, okay, you begin to see recognizable faces that are safe, people that you can go to. So in that way, I think that kind of connection is often overlooked as a solution, because it seems so small, but it's also probably the biggest thing. At least I can say that for myself, and it's whether with friends or family. And it really is so difficult to, like, when you're in an abusive relationship, and I'm saying this from my own experience, that it becomes very difficult to be able to connect with other people, because you feel suppressed and isolated. But when you know that when you can see, I mean, even then, like, it took me a while to see, okay, who is a safe individual. You forget, because you're constantly in an unsafe space. So that becomes difficult to recognize. but also extremely important to see that, because that can be, you know, a first major step. And that's just from simply being able to, you know, maybe confide in somebody. So yeah, I think connection is extremely important.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, because I haven't been in this situation, but I know just growing up, we lived in a place that had no diversity whatsoever. All right. So literally every day there'd be racial abuse from people driving past in their cars, like other adults in the neighborhood, kids, just every day. But if you brought it up to anyone, they were like, oh no, that wouldn't happen here. No, the people here are nice. Like, because there's no other black people. So they just didn't believe that, any of this was true. So in the end, you just stop bringing it up, because no one's going to listen. Nothing's going to change. No one's going to do anything. So what's the point in talking about it to anyone? So you just carry it with you all the time. And it's just like, who can you trust? Because you think certain people are your friends, and then the first time there's an argument, the first thing out of their mouth is some racial shit. And then you're just like, oh, well, can't hang around with these people anymore. Right. And so it's just this all the time, all the time, all the time, until you can connect with people who understand situations, right? Who, are from a similar place, right? And then you can talk about it, and you just feel a bit lighter, So I can kind of see where you're coming from, Do you think, though, with because I feel like community schemes and projects and initiatives and all of that kind of stuff is great, but sometimes I wonder if for some it might be too late, right? Certain behaviors become ingrained. And I think that if certain things were dealt with at school, then people from an early age can learn certain skills, right? Can have certain conversations. They understand certain things, right? So if we, from that early age in school, we learn communication skills, right? So it's how to talk to one another. So then people aren't just going to fists when they can't, communicate and cope, right? They know how to diffuse situations. And if we learn about, different religions and groups and different things like that, the differences between us, because when you boil everything down, we have more things in common than we do differences. You know what I mean? It's just like with, a lot of the things that happen with the Inuit people, it's kind of similar to what happened to, Africans, and, what I mean? Like religion getting forced on you, like slavery, just kids getting taken away, just all of these different things. So there are these common threads that bind us all. So if we learn about those things, you'd be like, oh, I mean, the only thing different between me and, thing is skin color, is religion, is, language, right? Otherwise, we're the same. So the hatred that could be formed is stamped out straight away. You know, I just always wonder, like, why don't we do that at that early point, which could just improve everything, you know?
I think Inuit already have for millennia that they, when I remember, because I grew up with my grandparents, I was raised seeing and doing and feeling. As a kid, if I'm disagreeing with my cousin or my sister, parents were expected not to take sides right at that moment and let the children feel the feelings. If we're fighting, arguing, say what we need to say. If I hit her back, cry together, and then, okay, let it be. And then we were expected to apologize for doing that. And, or maybe it's different. From my household, that's what was happening. I remember when my mother got so fed up with me and my cousin fighting a little bit. We're like 45 years old. We've been told, which means you two have to behave. You two have to behave. Come on, listen, stop fighting. And the next thing, what we call in Inuit is go doyo duk. You get suddenly hit on the forehead and you're like, oh, and whether you cry or you laugh. My cousin cried and I was laughing because I was like, oh, I did not expect that at all. And then we were playing. I was like, I was off guard. So my mother was like, okay, dude, that's it. Stop fighting. And then I was like, oh, I did not expect that. And she didn't hurt us.
Yeah.
And then when I was about 9, and she was telling me one day I'll be a mother and not to discipline my children too much, not to hurt them, and if I need to discipline them, and make them understand why I was disciplining them in the first place. And now younger generations, it's some are, that's not your child, that's my child, I'll deal with her the way I want to, and may take sides. And then that child becomes a spoiled, bossing the parents around, maybe even scaring them when they're teenagers or scaring adults, sometimes elders. Elder abuse is real too, that no one wants to talk about. And it may relate to either lack of food to support their family because there's lack of job. It may relate to substance abuse, whether it's alcohol or drugs or marijuana, to be specific, is most common. And lack of mental support workers, doctors, nurses. Inuit are in a present day not given that opportunity to get to be doctors or mental health specialists or specialized in autism, so we understand how brain works, or mental well-being, or we're not educated to be sitting in the judge position making decisions and justice. And I have a beautiful grandchild who woke up this morning and I'm like, okay, here's your Halloween costume. I'm in the modern day and I have this Halloween themed thing where my mother would not have even thought of, Halloween. I was like, oh, they're trick-or-treating. should we dress up? They're like, oh, you can put on mismatch boots, and here's your father's big parka. Here's a mask. Because we were not financially
Yeah.
affording these the big costume plastic masks that make you sweat you, and when you finally afford it, you're like, oh, they're not that good after all. So you start walking around with a mask on your head. Things shifted so fast that yeah, in our generation, it feels like we saw it in one shot, from out on the land to being in Hamlet to being a modern running a channel. It's beautiful how much we are resilient in a modern day. Even though we went through so much, we are still trying to protect and to promote our identity and to say we are equally as important as any human being, really.
Mm.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I would,
Sorry.
sorry. Can I would love to add in terms of the learning, I think before Inuit families were forced into settlements, I think it was always I think learning was something that was very much incorporated into everyday living. And it was a part of the child rearing process. And that was hugely disrupted when Inuit were not only forced into settlements, but when children started to be taken away from their families. So in that way, um, this this child rearing practice of teaching, watching, and learning. Because if there's one thing that has really sat with me um, from spending time with elders is you never stop learning.
Mm.
And it always being reminded that you're learning until the day you die, pretty much. And but if that's not something that is taught or reminded that, okay, you're going to watch and learn, or I'm going to teach you, um, you you then have a group of children who aren't not intentionally, but um, they don't realize that they're not learning simply because, like, because some as children, it's children are actually very easy. Like, I've having worked with a lot of people who you kind of have to usher. Children are actually very keen and naturally open to instruction. Um, but when and a lot easier than adults, actually, because adults are, set in their ways.
Hmm.
But when you're removed from your family and you actually you don't know, you don't realize that you've stopped learning, or that you're not it becomes something less intentional. Whereas, you grow up in a culture where learning is life.
Yeah.
And it's like that right from the get-go. And that is very intentional. You take that away, like, as a young person, you don't realize that you're actually not learning, and you're not as open to it as you would be if you have family members or a community who are constantly reminding you, you know, um, be open to learning. And sadly, it's not nearly as practiced now, especially post residential school, because that's kind of where all that the family structure was um, robbed of.
Mm.
But yeah.
Yeah, I think there is a lot to that, right? Because I think it's been proven that classrooms aren't necessarily the best form of education, right? There's people, there's people that can function in that environment, but there's a load of people that do not learn in that way the best, right? They are better like watching someone do something and following it, but you now have these big classrooms, 30 plus people, and it's just not conducive for everyone to be able to function. So it's just like there's a load of people that I think get stifled from an early age because they can't navigate that.
Exactly. Yeah, the classroom takes away from the one-on-one that is actually so very I almost want to say, I mean, it's essential, especially because we all learn differently. Like in a classroom, you have on average 20, 30 students in a classroom, and they're all unique individuals who all have different learning styles. And the teachers can't have, there's no one-on-one. It's physically impossible. And before classrooms, because families, because Inuit being or having been a nomadic people, often like they were just small families in a camp here and a camp there. They weren't huge community settlements that they are now. You had that opportunity to have more one-on-one to teach your children how to survive, thrive, how to do all of these things. You get to know your child and how your child learns, and then you impart all of these things, but again, you're forced into these communities, and you take all that away. It's like I feel like to some degree Inuit are or have like, okay, we're relearning how to live in a way, especially in these, like our ways, our practices. We still hear about a lot of them, but they're also where we don't practice them because we are in these communities, and there are a lot of things that we don't discuss. Even like residential schools, I didn't learn about. Like I'm in a community, and I didn't realize. I'm actually just learning as I like speaking it right now, because I was about to say that I didn't learn about it, but I just realized I was so in it that I didn't realize it was happening, because I was like, I was going into grade 9, which was when in our community, and every community I think was different. In grade 9, I remember preparing myself like, oh, I'm going to be sent away to a different community to continue going to school, because there was no because we have to grade 12, like, so we have like kindergarten, grade 1, all the way to grade 12 in our school system. And in our community, it was only to grade 9, because that's all. Like grade 10, 11, 12 were taught in an entirely different community. And I remember preparing myself that I'd be leaving my family to go to school for the next how many years. And then it was extended a year, because it was like, oh, we have grade 10 this year. And then again, the same thing happened the following year. I was like, oh, I'm now going to be going to grade 10 in another community. But then in hindsight, I was still a part of a residential school system. I didn't ultimately end up going because as each year passed, they would add on like a new year to our actual school. But it also really just shows you that I was still like, I was going to be going to residential school. That was normal. So it's not that I didn't like, I didn't realize what it was until much later, because in that moment it was like, oh, well, this is how it is. So in that way, when I'd say like, oh, I learned much later, oh, well, no, I was, because I was in it. And I was too young to know, what was even happening. I don't know where I was going with that, but that it would just kind of like drop. Oh, okay.
It is true though, Miali, because that happened in our community too, where I was preparing to go to grade 10 in Iqaluit. And then when I was in grade 9, grade 10 came. And as I'm in grade 10, I was like, okay, I'll go to grade 11 in Iqaluit. And then grade 11 and 12 came to Iglulik, and Iglulik was the second community besides Iqaluit that actually had a second grade. Iqaluit had grade 12. Northwest Territories, us back in the day, would go to Iqaluit for high school or Yellowknife to complete our grade 12. And then during our time, that's when more communities were coming in or extending to grade 10, 11, 12. I remember, because I also partially grew up in Tulugarjuk, my elementary school classmate coming to Iglulik for grade 10, 11, 12. And we were able to have things in common because we grew up in the same community for a while. So she felt like, okay, Lucy's there, it's good. I'm now in the new community. Even though we were so close to one another, but she still felt like I'm away from home. I'm in Iglulik in a new community, new environment, new people. Even though they're so close to one another, it still affects, and you still see it when you feel lucky because grade 12 is in Iglulik or community at the time, and then people coming into your community knowing there's lack of housing. You, as a student, you think about where are they going, knowing there's no boarding home or a facility to put these students. So the families become responsible for finding a safe space for their students, and it doesn't fall into the federal government or the Department of Education's pocket. It ends up in the parents' responsibility. And if you don't have a relative in that community, how do you do that? So that was what we saw, and I wonder if it still exists in some smaller communities, like Nauyat in a modern day, where it's less than 1,000 population, or even, Resolute Bay, Grease Fjord, they're less than 500 population. So do they go to Iqaluit? Where do they go? And is there funding for these to go to high school? If there is, you get lunch from school, but you got to get the tickets to get the funding. I mean, the food. And sometimes we hear students saying, I haven't received my funding yet. I need to feed my family. And they're trying to go to post-secondary school. So it's still always there's something that you run into, even though these resources are available. You got to fight for it still to be able to have access to secondary schooling. And if you're not in your Nunavut territory, as I am not in my territory, I'm a beneficiary, but there's some fundings myself or my children or grandchild may not be entitled to because we're not in our territory. So it's set that way by the was all organized. So you either in your home territory and get minimal, because when you go back down south or secondary school, you gotta upgrade your schooling majority of the time. When you finish grade 12 in the Northern Arctic community, you're like, oh, I thought I finished grade 12. I'm sorry, but you need to upgrade because your equivalence to the Southern education system may be grade 9, maybe grade 10, if you're lucky. But they make you pass because you get more funding. The more you graduate students, the more funding you get from federal government. So it's a cycle.
Yeah, the courses that are offered are definitely not up to par, or they're not even the same as the rest of the country. Because I remember being in high school, and I wanted to learn, because I really was big on like math and science, and I really enjoyed those classes, and I wanted to take biology and calculus, but I those were not even an option. And I remember having a discussion with the teacher to say, hey, I'd love to be able to, you know, up my biology courses because of where I want to go to, of the school that I want to go to, or of the education that I want to pursue, like post secondary. But I couldn't, and the teacher was like, I'm sorry, but we like, I could teach you, but I can't, like, I'm not, it all boiled down to, we don't have the money to, you know, we don't have the money, or you'd be the only student, and we can't afford that. And it and it's and these are courses that are basic in schools in Southern Canada. If I went to school in Southern Canada, I could have easily taken those classes. But I also, like, my family being, I mean, being in our home, like, we're, like, yeah, so the options are extremely limited. Yeah. So if I even wanted to pursue post-secondary education in the field that I wanted to, then I'd have to go to high school again in a southern location, because it was something that was not offered in my community. And that's very much often the case in the smaller communities.
That is if you're smart like Miali, being 17 and graduating. But if you're 18, they may say, you're a little old now. You can't come back to high school.
Well, school shouldn't have no age limit.
We were classmates in the secondary, so that's my comment about Miali.
That's, yeah, I didn't know that. That's it's very limiting on what people can do.
It's frustrating, to say the least. Yeah.
I think Arnaapik is the multiple voice of many, whether it's for women, or if you work for federal government, if you're a whistleblower, you may get fired. So it may represent someone who's a whistleblower. It may represent voicing out what majority people don't know about what's really happening. So I think I hope it's an eye opener, and an actual window to the reality of what really happens that is not often discussed or never discussed in high school um, throughout Canada or anywhere. I was in Europe filming or acting in a film, and they were like, "What? Inuk? Eskimo? Oh, oh, uh, I heard about Inuit from it's based in the 1900s book." I'm like, "We're still here. I'm here." Yeah, and we're alive, and we speak our language, Inuktitun, and we're thriving.
Yeah, it's just there's certain things that just don't get looked at, right? We don't look at different groups and peoples, and it's very weird. Like I was gosh, I forget what I was doing, but I remember reading somewhere that Coca-Cola were dropping like crates of Coke into Inuit like villages and places, and it was cheaper to get a Coke than it was to get water. And it's just like you read about these kind of things, because there was a similar thing along the Amazon, right? That they were pushing like these things along the Amazon, and it was easier to get this stuff that's not necessarily healthy and good for you, but you can't get the things that are good for you and healthy, and but nothing gets done about it all.
It's not that we can't get it, it's a choice of whether you can afford it or you can't.
That's what I
And
mean.
the
Like,
more
it's too expensive.
these one word that comes to mind is stingy companies. Well, is that when it's so true. I'm a Pepsi fan, and I admit that that's my addiction. I have to stop that, and I've been telling myself that. And then when I look at a water bottle, I'm like, $6, and my Pepsi's like $3.50 versus $6. Yeah, you might have $3.50. If I have $4 in my pocket and I'm thirsty, sugar, you will take away more sugar, water. Like, it doesn't make sense. But when you can't afford it, you get what you get. And when you're so used to junk food, after a while, I'm hungry. I'll have chocolate. Oof. Oof. And then children seeing that, I think it becomes norm. And then you offer them a broccoli. Oh, I don't eat that. Well, have you tried it? No. But how do you know if you haven't tried it yet? And then they're surprised how good it is. So, and then these vegetables and fruits come in once a week by airplane, if you're lucky. And then sometimes they're rotten and they're still in the full price.
Mm-hmm.
And then milk may expire on the same day that they finally are on 50% off. So things you would not dare to see in the south, you would see in the north. The companies really take advantage of the Arctic Inuit and visitors that they know we don't have much option.
Yeah.
So they will take advantage of that. Another very sad incident happened where JP, what is that called, Miali? Where
Of the piece.
no, not justice of the peace. I wish there was justice there, but Jordan's principle. It wasn't
Oh yeah.
even available for Indigenous people who may need it for more food or furniture or medical cost, and the stores hacked up their price just because they knew Inuit were receiving extra funds to get support for extra food. So what they did was the stores brought up the cost even more. Some even tripled. It's crazy that what I used to pay for a pamper is $32. What my daughter in the north or my niece in the north now pays for the same package, $70. That's crazy. That's like $1.50 every time you pee. So it's like ridiculous. So, and the high cost of living is real. The lack of housing is real. Moldy houses is real. It's the more money you make, the government will go after you because they'll hang up your rent, they'll hang up your expenses. It's ridiculous. And that doesn't happen in the South. They don't hang up my rent here. But in the North, they can because there's not a lot of monopoly. And so they take advantage of our high cost of airline tickets. I was estimating to go home to bring my 4 kids, well, 3 kids and 1 grandchild plus me. Guess how much? $35,000 from Saskatoon to Ottawa to Iqaluit to Igloolik, back to Iqaluit, Ottawa, Saskatoon. Hotel cost, food cost, $35,000. I was like, oh my God, there goes my savings account. No wonder we can't afford housing or cars because we gamble. Do I save to buy that car? Do I save to buy that house, or do I feed my family and help my family on top of that? It's all real.
It's kind of like a form of control, right? It's oppressive because if you can keep people in a downtrodden state, right, then they're not going to be able to fight the inequalities, right? It's, who was it? It was just in the 60s when they flooded like cocaine and alcohol into Black neighborhoods in America, right? It's control because you get people addicted to things and then they're not going to, then they won't be a problem, right? Because they'll be in a certain state, there'll be poverty, and, we then can manipulate and control them. And we see it all the time in different countries with different groups, different people, but it's the same playbook and it's disgusting. And like, they know it's happening, right? The government knows Coca-Cola and these manufacturers are doing these things, but they do nothing about it. Like, it's kind of because, right? So what a company does in England, right? There's certain rules and things, health and safety and all of this stuff. But then that same company can go somewhere else and completely disregard any of the rules that they might have to go by in England. But the company will say, we're ethical, we're good, but it's just like, if you would apply the same rules everywhere you went. You would pay people a similar wage everywhere you go. You know what I mean? But there wouldn't be the same equalities. You wouldn't be doing these fucked up practices. But they do it because they know they can get away with it. They know that governments aren't going to say anything. It's just like you have like people like the UN that see all of these things. United Nations see all of these things and they do nothing. And it's baffling, right? It's baffling how people are happy to go, lift up arms for certain causes, but then other things, they just turn away. But that's why it's
Yeah.
important that people like you ladies make these films and documentaries that shine the light, that, you know, you're not afraid to step into those dark places and have your voices heard. So it's like, I'm really glad you made this. And I think it's like, you know, it's that step up to change, right? I don't think we are going to see a big sweeping change in any of these situations, but things like this will help conversations, and we will start to see gradual changes, you know? And I think this will help for sure, because more people will see and understand, and then they'll talk, and, you know, they might join the men's group, they might, you know, form a women's group, they might just think, oh, I can talk about this now, or right, I'm gonna leave this person, and, you know, all of these things, it will just help, it will be a big help. So yeah.
And that was definitely one of our goals, was to be able to, I mean, for me, it's always, even if it's one person, yeah. And I mean, it feels like a double-edged sword, because I feel fortunate, but also it's so unfortunate to, like, I feel fortunate to, you know, to be a part of the voice, but also, like, that, when you think about it though too, it's also so unfortunate, because, like, why do we have to make
Yeah.
films like this, you know? It's it definitely, you know, there's other days where I feel very, you know, grounded and, you know, grateful, and then other days I'm like, oh, okay, why? Like, there's no other words other than just simply why. But yeah, I really am happy to be here, to be a part of sharing the film, because I never thought I could years ago. So it's a big it's a big deal.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's great. So are there going to be other places people can see the series? Because I know it runs again from the 24th of November. Is that correct?
Yeah, so it runs again on the 24th of November on Novagot TV on Sundays at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I think it's gonna be on the website once it's finished. It's running on Novagot. That was the idea. And the website is arnaapik.izuma.tv. Sorry, I don't know if you can put that in the comments somewhere.
It will
But
be
people,
on the website, so people
yeah,
will find all the information.
yeah, and we are working on a feature film that could go to festivals, because right now the series is really great, that it's like 6 parts that look at different things. The first one looks at the elders, the second one at the system, the third one looks at empowered women, the fourth one at youth, which we talked about a lot today, the fifth one looks at the artists who inspire us, and the sixth one is community programs. So what we want to do with the feature film, it's more like just bring everything and have one film that people can watch, that could be more like travel to festivals, or like if they don't have 6 hours to sit and watch.
Yeah.
You know, in communities, like it might be hard to bring the 6 hours to each community, but like maybe the feature film might be easier. So we're doing that.
Okay, that's great. Like, is there a timeline for that, or like what stage are we with the feature?
So it should be coming out in the new year.
Okay,
Yeah.
fantastic, fantastic. So, how can people, keep an eye on everything you ladies are doing? Let everyone know, right? Where can they follow you, keep track of all your work, support you, all of that jazz?
I'm keeping low lately. I've been putting my mother, my grandma hat. I've been so focused on work for so many years that my children need me as well. So I'm keeping low. I traveled a lot. I did a lot of work. I'm not sure what my next work is other than Uvagud TV, managing Uvagud TV. I declined 3 offers since this spring, so I don't know my future other than my managing Uvagud TV. Acting wise, I don't know yet. I'll act for Miali's beautiful upcoming project for a very short time. I commit to because she committed so much for me for this documentary. I would love to follow through my commitment and complete her project. And then after that, I'm not going to do any filming for a while or acting. Just focus on executive director for Uvagud. Thank you.
Okay.
And motherhood.
Similar to Lucy, I mean, I have Instagram. It's Red Webbed Feet. However, I also am very low key. I do have like a list of things that I am working on. They're not in one, like, it's not really something that you can like have a look at all in one place.
Right.
But like Lucy mentioned, I'm currently working on a short VR film that, and there's this, and I'm also a translator, so I really I wear a lot of hats, and I go wherever the contract takes me, and so sometimes I'm working up north. I worked out of Montreal a lot this year. But I go wherever the work takes me. It's now that I think about it, though, I'm like, oh, okay. It would be good to have like a central location of, like, to be able to answer this question simply. Where can you find my work? We'll figure that out. I'll figure that out.
Yeah, you need to build yourself a website.
I can help you with that, Miali.
Yeah. That is a new pinned task to do.
Yeah.
To all the other list of things I'm doing.
With me, I actually do have a website, but I haven't put anything on about Arnaapik on it. I haven't had time to update it. It has a lot of other things. So it's my first and last name.com, mayaiotzova.com. But I'm kind of thinking of leaving Facebook and Instagram. So I think that's the best place. Yeah. And I'll update it with Arnaapik. And the Arnaapik website, it's great. Like arnaapik.izuma.tv. I think you can find we can find the interviews we did there.
Yeah.
You can find behind the scenes images. You can eventually watch the episodes, but you can read about them now. And yeah, you can get some stills from the film, and yeah.
Great stuff. Well, people, all the information will be on the webpage for this episode. So make sure you check it out. And you can, go find out more about the work the ladies are doing. You can go to the Arnaapik website because, there's so many resources on there. Definitely worth checking and watching the series once it's on the website. Because you're not airing it on any international networks or anything.
Not at the moment. Maybe when it becomes a feature film. That's the goal, is to go beyond Canada. I think it's a very important message. Based on my observations from Q&As after presenting Tulugarjuk, it became quite clear that it's not just us Indigenous people, that it's who relates to these stories, but so many people. Whether you're Indigenous, white, African, Asian, people can relate.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Okay, so we look forward to seeing the rest of the series and then this feature film next year. Hopefully, ladies, once it's ready to talk about, you'll come back and we can have another conversation.
Well, thank you for having us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm so glad that we were able to have this conversation. It's important, it's insightful, and it was just a pleasure talking with you all.
Likewise, thank you.
Thank you for the space, Kevin.
No worries. Okay, so thank you, Lucy, Maya, Mila. Oh, gosh.
Miali.
Yes, Miali. Sorry. Oh. No, thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your days. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.